Hello, my friends. Welcome. I'm going to teach you something that I think is fabulous. It's called the empathy triangle. And it's a practice that I have designed that will help you use your intuition, use your senses, your sense thinking to understand the hidden or unseen motivations behind the character that you're reading about in your favorite book or that you're studying, a character in a movie, a historical figure, yourself, and your friends. So it's a great way to really empathize, to really understand what the motivations are. It's also great if you are wanting to write a paper about a person in history or a piece of literature. This is an excellent way to get some original insight. My name is Aita Bay, and I'm the creator of this really cool thing called SenseThinking. I help people drop into their intuition as a tool for learning. And when you do that, you will discover that you have so much more capacity than you have come to believe. And that's my vision, my goal for this work is that I can help people become empowered because I really do feel that our current educational system disempowers learners. It doesn't really give us the capacity to solve problems we are facing. We are living in times when there's so much that needs really creative, innovative solutions, including solutions that allow people to be connected, that allow people to understand each other. And so this is one of those tools that we can use for that, this and other sense thinking practices. One thing I want to address before I get into the practice, and that is an objection that, a really valid objection about the kind of work that I do. Now, again, I teach people how to use their intuition in learning. So naturally, the question that will come up is, well, can I trust my intuition? Like, is it going to be accurate or valid information that I'm getting by using my senses? That's a great question. And my answer to that question is just to help you think for a moment about what regular thinking is. So in this case, we are asking about the motivations of someone you're reading about in a book, let's say. And so if I were to say, well, what's the motivation, for Romeo and Juliet, right? Now, if you were to raise your hand and say, well, his motivation is that he went to Mars and after visiting Mars, he's decided he loves all Martians and Juliet reminds him of a Martian and that's why he's in love with her. Well, there's no evidence in the text for that, right? So that would be a great creative story. So you go ahead and write that story. When we're asking about, well, what are the motivations for the characters, we already have in our normal critical thinking strategies, we already know what to do. We have an idea, we generate an idea, and then we look for evidence. In this case, evidence in the text or evidence in the historical context of the story or something else that would suggest that this idea that we have is true. Okay, so idea and evidence. When we are doing our sense thinking, we're going to do exactly the same thing. We are going to generate an idea, and then we're going to look for evidence that supports that idea. The difference is that we're going to use a different part of our knowing, a different part of our intelligence. We're dropping directly into our senses and our intuition. So my suggestion to you is to be willing to, I guess you could say, suspend disbelief or trust the process, experience an experiment for yourself, and then see if it generates new and original ideas. Now, the empathy triangle has 3 elements. The 3 forces are an activating force. In other words, what are the driving forces behind this character? What are the needs? What are the traumas? What are the things that spur them on, that motivate them? The second force that we're going to look at is the restraining force. Now, the restraining force can show up a couple of ways. One, it can show up as a kind of opposition. So perhaps this is a character that has an enemy, and that enemy is part of what makes the restraining force. But more likely, or just as likely, the restraining forces are more like the challenges that character has to go through, the different components of their life that they will make their life from. The analogy that I give is like a clay. Let's say my need is to drink water and my material is clay. The clay becomes my restraining force, right? I don't have every single material. I have a restraint, a creative constraint in the case of the clay. So it's the same thing when we're looking at the restraining force in for people or characters, that there's these conditions in their life. And those conditions are the material through which they make their lives. Finally, there's the third force, which is the reconciling force or the creative force. So how does the character creatively bring together these other two elements in their lives to make their experience? Now, these three forces, they're not like evaluated and strategized. So it's not like the character says, oh, well, I've got these three forces in my life. I've got this activating force, this need for adventure. And the need for adventure is perhaps because, the way my mother treated me or my father treated me. But there's a need to go out into the world. And, oh, I've got this big challenge. So now how will I creatively bring this together? No, it's not analyzed like that. We can analyze them as a reader, for example, but the character themselves doesn't sit back and try to analyze the forces, to strategize. This is really about what makes them as a person, as a character. Now, having described the empathy triangle, it certainly is possible that you could, as a reader, you could analyze those three forces. So, for example, we were speaking about Romeo and Juliet, right? If I were to analyze Romeo, for example, I might wonder, well, what is a driving force for him? Maybe it has to do with him wanting to break free from the restrictions of his family, right? But that's just a mental analysis. What if we could do another level of analysis, one that allows us to drop into the intelligence of our senses and of our intuition? And that's what the empathy triangle practice is going to do. If you're going to do this along with me, I would grab 3 pieces of paper plus an extra fourth one, so 4 pieces of paper. And on the first piece of paper, write the word activating force. On the second piece of paper, write the word restraining force. And on the third piece of paper, write the word reconciling force. These are the 3 elements of the empathy triangle. Now, on the fourth piece of paper, you're going to write the name of a character that you want to learn more about. So here are my characters, and here's pieces of paper that I have where I've written activating, restraining, and reconciling force on there. Okay, I want you to put them on the floor. So start with your character number 1. I'm going to do Luke Skywalker first. And then around that character, make a little triangle where you place your 3 forces. Okay? And this is the part where you're just going to trust the process. We are going to step on each of these 3 forces. So you start in the activating force and just notice what shows up in your body. That's it. Make some note. What do you feel? Well, you might have an emotion, right? You might have a sensation in a certain area of your body. You might feel like you're moving, you want to move in a certain way. The meaning of it might not be clear. That's okay. Your body is going to respond. You're going to get some information, some thoughts, some ideas, some sensing. Trust the sensations that come in, the images that come in, especially if they're spontaneous images. My experience is that the body doesn't lie, but our interpretation of the information can be off, which is okay. So trusting what arises. Interestingly, I feel a little, I feel like I have almost like a solid line in my body. My knees are together. I'm leaning back a little bit. I feel a little bit uncomfortable. I have to adjust my posture. I don't know why I feel this way. Yeah, my knees are together. And I feel kind of stressed, like there's some kind of tension. Okay. Restraining force. I'm going to go to the restraining force then. The restraining force, it's interesting. It's almost like they're opposite because the restraining force actually feels more like I'm leaning forward. I feel, it's like I feel pulled forward. It's as if his activating force wants to keep him more in place, but his restraining force, the opposing force, um, this other part of him wants to move him forward. That's not something I have thought about before. Okay. And then the reconciling force. How do these come together? The reconciling force. Yeah. Ah, so interesting. I really feel myself I'm standing between the two forces, the activating and the reconciling. I feel very strong and powerful, and I feel like I'm drawing energy as if they're my roots. I'm drawing energy up, and they're coming inside of me. I feel mature. I feel more mature. Yeah, the activating force, um, this kind of activating force felt more, it's like an inner, feels kind of psychological. Like there's like this sense of, um, the complication, like, no, complication. It's like childhood. I feel like it makes me think about childhood trauma. The boy, the boy who's that almost doesn't understand his own motivations. And then there's the part of him who's driven outward into this kind of adventure. And then there's this maturing that comes in the reconciling force where he draws on both parts of himself to become whole. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing now for Darth Vader. We've done our analysis of Luke Skywalker. Let's do our analysis of Darth Vader. So I'm just going to switch out the Luke Skywalker from the middle for Darth Vader. And what do I feel? Let's see. Activating force. What's the activating force for Darth Vader? So I feel it's a feeling of, I want to say powerful because he does feel like mature adult, and it's the kind of, it's like an authority. It's like the patriarch. It's like not patriarch isn't the best word, but authority is a good word. And when I see authority, I mean it's an energy of I know what's right. That's what I feel. An energy of I know what's right. And even an energy of revenge or justice, like that quality, like I know what to do to make things right, which has underneath it this quality of justice and revenge. And that's the activating force, the restraining force. The restraining force feels like it's moving behind him, and almost like pulling him back, like almost as if it's literally restraining him. And it feels like a younger. It feels like heart. It feels like a desire. It's like the part of himself that um was, let's say, a Jedi, a former Jedi, like kind of like that quality of like, don't remember your values, remember where you came from, the heart. But the activating force is much stronger. The activating force feels clearly like, no, I know how to get justice. The reconciling force, the reconciling force, yeah. Oh, this is so interesting. Now I know, of course, I know the story. You know the story of Star Wars probably too. But the what I feel when I step with the reconciling force, and I'm coming back because it seems so clear. I feel the way in which he's calling his son. Like it's as if that is the reconciling force for him to that if he can just have his son with him, then actually it's going to reconcile the part of him that's heart, the part of him from his younger self, and the part of him that's like, I know what's right and wrong, and this is how I'm going to get justice, and this is the way the world should be, right? And the reconciliation for him would be, and now my son is on my side, and I can love and kind of be devoted to him at some part of me, but I can still impose my will. Okay, so there you go. That is my in the moment sense thinking of, working with this empathy triangle and getting to know these two characters. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you want to learn more about what sense thinking is and how I came up with it, you should go download my ebook. I've got the link someplace in descriptions. I think it's probably in the description. Yeah, so check out my link in the description. And also, there's something really important. In fact, the most important force of all the forces that we're going to study today is this very important force here, which is for you to like and subscribe.